we have to remember a few things. This is not an ordinary country. And they're using very strong words that on our soil there are criminal elements which are being backed by India. You know, there is another case. There is one Gupta who was actually caught, and there is one Yadav who's again being accused. But in the case of Canada, we're not speaking with each other, we are speaking at each other.
Hello, I'm Srinivasan, and welcome to this brand new show, Talking Sense with Srini. So I'm here at one of Chennai's iconic tea shops, Chai Kings, where every sip has a story, and we're going to discuss about the week's biggest story, India-Canada diplomatic standoff and its ramifications on Indians in Canada. Joining me is our editor-in-chief, Mr. Srinivasan, sir. So thank you very much for joining us on the Federal. Great to have you.
Yeah, nice to drag you on a weekend. Yeah.
Thank you. Let me begin with what Justin Trudeau had to say, right? I mean, he has said India has done a horrific mistake because of its alleged links to the murder of Khalistani separatist leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar. But Justin Trudeau hasn't provided any evidence. He says, he acted based on intel reports. So do you see this comments as Trudeau's political tactics because the elections are coming next year?
Yeah, you could interpret that way, because one statement which he is constantly officially making is that there is a credible allegation, he's not saying credible evidence. That's a big point, whether he is standing firm to that. So there are actually two narrations. One narration which is being set by the Indian government, the other narrative which is being set by the, Canadian government. Obviously, Trudeau is facing an election which is around the corner, and he's a liberal government, and he is under pressure, and he badly needs the support of Sikhs there, especially this particular party which is backing him. So there is a suspicion that some of his acts could be politically motivated. But on the other hand, Indian government has been constantly saying, not just now, recently, yesterday they held a press conference where they said there are at least 26 people actually, they have asked extradition. They wanted them details, and they are saying these are the names I'm giving you. These are the people who are Sikh radicals and who are creating problem for us, and we need extradition. And there is no reply from Canadian government. So Indian government has a grouse. They have been for over a period of time saying that some of these people who were involved, allegedly with the Khalistani movement, and those people are there, and they are kind of getting protection there. So this is a narrative which is coming from the Indian government. But on the other hand, the Canadians are saying, look, on our soil, and they're using very strong words that on our soil there are criminal elements which are being backed by India. It's a very strong statement coming from them, and therefore it's actually two narrations. And election certainly is one reason. All politicians, whenever they have to face elections, it's much easier for them to direct the problem towards an outside space, and it serves them if they can help it here. So it could be that. But the fact that we have to remember a few things. This is not an ordinary country. Canada is a part of G7. And there are other developed nations, for instance, United States, UK, they also seem to be kind of backing the allegation that there is a killing which has happened on the Canadian soil. Nigger was, this person was killed, and then therefore there is an element. But Indian government again is saying, look, there is no shred of evidence. You haven't told us anything. How do we believe that any such thing has happened? So this is going back and forth. And I think the relation between Canada and India has been very good. And this is the real nadir. We really hit the bottom. And that's not very good.
As you rightly said, Canada enjoys a influential, clout within the G7. Is also a part of the influential grouping called Five Eyes. Do you think it's the United States has also reacted to this controversy? They said India should actually, collaborate and work with Canada as it investigates this case further. Do you think India can actually fend off pressure that's coming in from the United States and the UK, the West in general, so to over this Canadian row?
So if you notice today's newspaper, clearly, the signals from US is not bad for India. They are saying that India is cooperating with us. But then we have to make a distinction. approach of India towards the United States in a similar case seems to be very different from our approach towards Canada. There is another case. There is one Gupta who was actually caught, and there is one Yadav who's again being accused of being involved in an attempted uh, killing of someone called Panun there. Again, a radical element there. Now, apparently, the judicial system there is already examining it. The American judiciary is actually questioning, and it has gone to that level. Uh, but here, the Americans recently said that, look, Indian government is cooperating. We have even sent a delegation of officials there, and they're speaking to them. So here, we are speaking with each other. But in the case of Canada, we are not speaking with each other. We are speaking at each other. So we seem to be directing our, voices in a different direction. That's what Canada is also doing. They're also raising these issues in a public forum. Essentially, these issues, if at all anything such a thing has happened, need to be spoken behind the curtain, behind the scene. It need to be settled diplomatically. You can't, fight in the open the way it has happened. It's very unfortunate. This kind of situation India is facing with Canada is very bad. In fact, it has made some people to compare East Canada and New Pakistan. I won't go that far, but certainly it's not a very good situation.
This isn't the first time that Canada is having a rough relationship with India as such. Trudeau's father, in fact, also had a fallout with India back then when he was prime minister because of Canada's alleged Khalistani links. And do you think it's high time for Canada to actually, do something about it?
Yeah, actually, that's a valid point. There are 2-3 other instances where Canada and India had problem. Let me wind back to 1974. India did its first nuclear explosion, and Canada was very upset. And it was actually Trudeau's father, Perry. He was very upset, and he had made an India visit just before that, and we had a very cordial relation. He goes back, and then in 1974 we explode a nuclear bomb. That's India's first nuclear bomb. Now, Canada is very upset because the plutonium, which is required for making that bomb, was taken. They suspected is taken from the reactor which we was running with the help of Canada. It's called Cyrus reactor. So as a result of Canada got very unhappy because there was an agreement which they thought was breached. The agreement was that it's being used for us, kind of peaceful purposes. That's why the reactor was given, and we take some plutonium out of it and actually make a bomb. Though India claimed that time and announced it clearly, and that our nuclear explosion was only for peaceful purposes. But Canada was not willing to buy that. It led to a bad situation, and there was a similar scene then also. But then after that, if you remember, the Khalistan movement really picked up in India. Now, when that actually happened, in the 1980s, India has been sending constantly reminders, and a lot of things happen in India. Bad things happen in India. They send a thing that, look, a lot of radical elements are coming to Canada, and they are, kind of getting a safe haven there. And they've been warning it, and Canada kept on overlooking those warnings. As a result, an air crash happened in 1985, Kanishka, which was one of the worst, perhaps the aviation disasters in the history. And clearly, the investigation followed up showed that the Canadian administration, the government was very lax. They had a lot of chances to do something. They did not heed to our warning. So therefore, that was another point when the relationship went bad. But subsequently, it improved. Manmohan Singh, Prime Minister, he visited, and then after that, once again, India and Canada signed a nuclear deal following our agreement with the United States, and then the kind of situation once again normalized. But then this time again, for last 1 year, the situation is deteriorating. But the difference here is we don't face any such thing in Punjab. If you go to Punjab, there is no Khalistani impact there. So there is no such crisis as of now, in Indian soil. So that's the difference. Yeah.
Okay, there's also a very interesting Washington Post report that just come in, which is linked the Home Minister Amit Shah and the senior raw officials to the assassination of the Sikh separatist leader in Canada. It's quite certainly startling to high proportions. and the report is also sort of actually watered down in the Indian press. Very few media houses actually reporting on this, Federal being one of them. If it were to stand true, do you anticipate a diplomatic showdown that's gonna brew between India and the West going forward?
Yeah, so Washington Post is a very credible newspaper. You can't ignore a Washington Post story. But Indian government so far has not reacted. And the story quotes some American officials, perhaps, and suggests that India's top minister, who's literally number two, who's running the administration after, Prime Minister Modi, he's a very, very important person. Naming something like this in a report is not very good, and it looks completely out of whack that something like this would happen. It's not very good for India, India's image. India is a very, considered a democracy which is very credible, which is, which doesn't take such measures. After all, this India is known as a nation of Gandhi. So such things do not happen here, and it's very, very outlandish to something like this to happen. But then Washington Post has put out a report. There has not been a firm rebuttal from the Indian government so far, which many observers feel it should come. Many diplomats are saying that there should be very, very strong response from Indian government to this, and that hasn't so far come. Maybe Indian government is still formulating something on it, but it should come. They should rebut this report.
There's also this, the lot of Indian diaspora continue to stay in Canada. There is this whole bunch of a Canadian dream among Indians even today. Do you think Indians will begin to rethink pursuing the Canadian dream? Because we actually spoke to a lot of education consultants where they've already said there's been a decrease in terms of interest among students to pursue their higher studies in Canada. How do you think this situation is going to pan out going forward?
Again, there is an large Indian diaspora which is there. It's about nearly estimated 15 lakh people are there, and a large number of them Sikhs, and a good amount of students. Indian students are now traveling outside to study more, and they have kind of found a taste of the global education, which is very important. And Indian people are going all over. So it's obviously a big setback, because parents back home will get extremely worried if this kind of things happen. On the top of it, Indian government has also complained that there are radical elements, terror elements who are roaming free, and it's a danger for our own citizens there. On the other hand, Canadians are accusing, look, there are elements here which are creating problem. Indian ME has objected to that, saying, look, you're the one who are promoting them, and you're complaining against them also. So there is a contradiction in that. So all these things which are being publicly played out is certainly not good for people. Who, end of the day, people make long-term plans. They make 5-year plan to send their child for an education, 4-year or 5-year, and suddenly some disruption like this happens is not very good. So I feel that this, to settle this, the issues need to be sorted out very quickly.
So thank you very much. It's nothing less riveting talking to you. Always a pleasure talking to you. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Vijay.